Rabbi Bernstein, we can't hear you. We cannot hear you. We can't hear you. We can't hear you. Please turn yourself on. We cannot hear you. The rest of you will start in just a minute as soon as Rabbi Bernstein will get himself working. He's going to join us here in just 1 second. Just 1 second. Just be patient with us as we're trying to get him back on, friends. Thank you for your patience.
thought I was on. Okay. Oh, a little closer.
Rabbi Steve, you're on.
A little
Hallelujah. Rabbi Steve?
Finally, I thought I was on. I was talking.
Wow, Baruch Hashem, Baruch Hashem. Okay, praise be to God. Okay, praise be to God. Before turning it to you, hold on, give me 1 second, please. 1 second. A lot of people have been waiting patiently.
Well, we're less than an hour late, so I count that as good.
I want to, before we start, I don't want to say too much. I don't want to say too much before we start. We want to dedicate this shiur to our Lemba people today. And may this shiur bring merit for the difficult, very difficult day that we've been having today with this demonic attack that we've been dealing with. So may the merit of the Rashbi and all the tzaddikim of Israel help us to be successful. I think it's a great thing to talk about today, Rabbi. So we dedicate those that are working around the clock from Africa, Asia, and Israel still. Remain in prayer, everybody. Thank you very much.
There's a sack of oat chunks. Maybe you want to throw one or two.
I am turning this broadcast, Steve, to you. I'm turning this broadcast to you, and I'm asking everybody to be in vigilant prayer for everything that's happening right now. Chag Sameach.
Chag Sameach, am I on? I couldn't hear what Tachi was saying.
Yeah.
May your voice be healed.
Chag Sameach, it's all yours. Go ahead.
Okay. First off, may Hashem provide a healing, miraculous or otherwise, for your voice. We need your voice to heal. So please refrain from using it as much as possible. Tea with honey. I'm sure you have that at your house. And from American, have a little bourbon in it. So today is Lag BOMER, the 33rd day of the Omer. We've been counting the Omer since the 16th day of Nisan, which is the day after the Moed, the first day of Pesach. And so the counting of the Omer, the time of the counting of the Omer is a time of mourning for us because Rabbi Akiva had 25,000 students die of a plague during Lag BOMER. And so in memory of this, we're not really in mourning, but we're a little sad. So we do sad kinds of stuff and we don't do happy kinds of stuff, except for this one day, the 33rd day of the Omer, Lag BOMER. Okay, it's called Lag BOMER because Lamed signifies 30 in Hebrew, and Gimel represents 3. So the 33rd day of the Omer is known as Lag, Lamed Gimel. So back in the time of the Second Jewish Revolt, so the first Jewish revolt occurred in the year 70 against the Romans, and the Romans laid siege to Jerusalem for 3 years, finally tore down the walls around Jerusalem, conquered all of Jerusalem, burned the temple, and everybody was killed or enslaved, or it was a horrible, horrible time. There was murder and rape and everything else. There was a small group of zealots that made their way south to a place called Masada. That was, and they all committed suicide later, rather than be captured by the Romans. That was the first revolt. This was the second revolt. Now, there was a good general who was a very charismatic leader, whose name was Bar Kosiba. And because of his charismatic being, he was known as Bar Kokhba, the son of the star, son of the morning star. And he led the revolt against Rome and was very successful. He won many battles. He retook Jerusalem. We even have coins, and Eldad Kenan can tell us about these sometime. We even have coins depicting the Korban Pesach, the Passover sacrifice, being held in the destroyed temple on Pesach during the Bar Kokhba revolt. We don't know that this actually happened, but it certainly, it was celebrated, so it certainly seems like it might have if they had a commemorative coin. During this time, one of the 5 surviving students of Rabbi Akiva, named Shimon Bar Yochai, decided that this was not going to go well, this revolt. And so he did something very interesting. He ran for the hills. He headed for the hills. He ran up towards Tzfat in the Galilee. And when he was up towards Tzfat in the Galilee, he came to a cave outside the little small village of Meron, some 10 miles or less actually from Tzfat. And he and his son went into the cave and hid because of the carnage he thought was going to take place because of the revolt. So they hid in the cave for 13 years. Hashem provided them with a carob tree for food and a spring of fresh water, and they stayed there for 13 years. In the meantime, the second revolt was crushed, and Bar Kokhba was killed. The capital city of Beitar was laid waste. Hundreds of thousands of Jews just from that city alone were slaughtered, and the Romans would not let the Jewish people go into the fields to recover the dead, not until years later. These things are mourned on the day of Tisha B'Av, on the 9th day of Av. So after this happened, Bar Kokhba emerged from the cave with his son Eliezer. And what he found was that the sages, almost all the sages, had been killed. They'd all been killed. And there was no one that had the stomach for keeping Torah alive. Torah was going to die out. Nobody wanted to teach it. It was a death penalty by the Romans. Nobody had the courage. It wasn't worth it. We just were going to be killed anyway. Why give the Romans an excuse? Everything you could think of was working against this idea of Torah surviving in the world. But Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, whose acronym is Rashbi, so we call him the Rashbi, Rabbi Shimon, by strength of will alone, was empowered by Hashem to force Torah to remain in the world. Rabbi Shimon was a charismatic guy, but this couldn't be done alone. He was empowered by Hashem to keep the light of Torah going in the world. Now, the Rashbi was born on Lag BOMER. He died eventually on Lag BOMER. He went into the cave in Meron on Lag BOMER, and he emerged from the cave on Lag BOMER. So Lag BOMER, because the Torah is alive today, because of Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, who ran into the hills. Because of him, Torah is alive today, and we celebrate that. We celebrate that with lighting a fire so that it symbolizes the light of Torah being spread in the world. Okay? Now, 3 years ago? Is it 3 years ago, Mother? 3 years ago we were in Tzfat?
Oh boy.
About 3 years.
Yeah,
Ish.
Yeah, well, it was Mom. Yeah, it was 3 years ago.
It was 3 years ago. So in 3 years ago, when we were in Tzfat, my beautiful bride on our anniversary today, photo bomb. Thank you, my love.
Make a marshmallow in your beard.
I get marshmallow in my beard. we went and visited the Rashbi's tomb on Mount Meron. And there's a beautiful small synagogue up there. And on the way toward the tomb, I was describing to Roni what happened with the Rashbi, and a little old man heard, and he came up to me, and in English said, "You're speaking English. You know the Rashbi. You know the Rashbi." I said, "Okay," and he said, "Come with me," and grabbed my shirt sleeve and led me around behind where the tomb of the Rashbi was. And he took me around and underneath, and there was this small entranceway with doors. It was chain locked. There was a big padlock on it. And he produced a key from inside his shirt, and he unlocked the padlock, and he pulled the chain off and opened up the doors, and he said, this was actually the cave that the Rashbi and his son Eliezer stayed in for the 13 years. And so he brought me into the cave, and he said a Misha Berach for me for my health and well-being. This is a very special moment for me. Now, because I was born on Lag BOMER, because Roni and I are married on Lag BOMER, well, first of all, like the Rashbi, Roni assumes I'll die on Lag BOMER also. So if I make it through a Lag BOMER, she thinks I'm good for a year. But also, I feel a special connection with the Rashbi. There are many, many, many references to the Rashbi and the things that Rashbi said in the Mishnah and also in Midrash. Okay, in Pirkei Avot, he was quoted also. So today we celebrate Lag BOMER, we celebrate the Rashbi, and we celebrate that Torah is alive in the world. You may ask, why did the Rashbi flee for the hills?
Why did the Rashbi flee from the hills?
The Rashbi flee from the hills. The Rashbi flee for the hills. Perhaps because in the Brit Chadashah it says that's what we should do when we believe it's the end times coming. To flee for the hills, flee for the mountains. This is what the Rashbi did. I think because of some of the things that the Rashbi said, the fact that he did flee for the hills, that there's a good chance that the Rashbi was a believer in Yeshua. Now, we can't know this for certain, but we do know that there were believers in Yeshua that were among the Tanaim. One of them was Rabbi Tzadok, that the great Rabban Yochanan ben Zakkai, when he was negotiating with General Vespasian, one of the things he negotiated was medical treatment for Rabbi Tzadok. Because in the year 70, Rabbi Tzadok had been fasting for 40 years. And 40 years prior to when the Rabbi Tzadok started fasting, that was when Yeshua walked the earth and then was executed and then resurrected. So perhaps Rabbi Tzadok was a believer in Yeshua and was fasting and wanted, Yochanan ben Zakkai wanted to give Rabbi Tzadok, make sure he got some medical attention. Also, we have quotes from another great Tana named Ben Zoma, who was at Yavne. And we know from many of the things that Ben Zoma said that there's a good chance that he also was a believer in Yeshua. We knew that believers in Yeshua were around and amongst the Tanaim. So I think that Yochanan ben Zakkai, the Rashbi, was in fact a believer in Yeshua. And that makes it even more impressive that it was his strength and his will through the power of Hashem that kept the Torah alive for all the Jewish people, not just the believers in Yeshua. So I encourage everyone to celebrate the day. Those of you in the land are finished celebrating. I hope you had a wonderful Lag BOMER. If you're ever in the land during Lag BOMER, there are fires all over the place. If you happen to be on the coast in Haifa or in Netanya or Tel Aviv, you can look up and down the coast and see the fires dotting the landscape. It's really a beautiful scene. If you're in Yerushalayim, you can go down to Mea Sharim, the ultra-Orthodox neighborhood, and the yeshivot there, and the Cheder. They have fires that are lit also. Some of them more dangerous than others. But there's also a huge farbrengen, and they get together and sing and they dance because Torah, the light of Torah, exists in the world today because of the efforts of the Rashbi. So Chag Sameach for everybody, and I hope you have a wonderful time.